Swarm.
What just happened? Why is the music playing?
Something big is heading your way.
Oh, hello there. Never mind.
Really? No, that's a
Morkite quota met.
that's a dreadnought, I believe.
Rock and Stone Miners. I'm your host, Kate Goodfox, and welcome to this week's Deep Dive and Elite Deep Dive Walkthrough Guide. This is for the week of May 11th through May 18th, when the next week of Deep Dives begins. I've already been through them all, so what I'm going to do is show you what I experienced along the way and how to overcome them. Remember, if you'd like to see me play live doing the Deep Dive, catch me on Thursdays at Get Good Fox on Twitch. Let's start with the Deep Dive. Then we'll move into the Elite Deep Dive, and I'll round things out with my Class Dwarf MVP recommendation. So, into the Deep Dive. This week, our Deep Dive is occurring within the radioactive exclusion zone, and this is one of the areas where the stone takes 3 strikes of the pickaxe to break down, which can be annoying, so a driller or having the Rocky Mountain Brew could definitely help you here. Mission 1 has a difficulty of Hazard 3. You'll be protecting the drill dozer. It will need to refuel 1 time. You'll also need to collect 2 alien eggs. Expect 1 swarm. There is a mutator in effect, which is low gravity. This is an excellent bonus because it lets you jump higher. It causes you to fall slower. You can still take falling damage, but you do have to fall a lot farther. This should be a very simple mission because the low gravity is going to allow you to escape the enemies very easily. And I've got a bonus tip for you when you're in the final part of the escort. You can actually jump high enough to power attack the beamers. And if you aim for the tip, it will actually shatter the beamer and kill it in a single power attack, which is really awesome. Final tips would be, have a gunner. The gunner can destroy the rocks and the beamers with the primary weapon. Once again, when shooting at the beamers, aim at the tip, and you shouldn't have any problems. So let's go ahead and move into Mission 2. Difficulty goes up to Hazard 3.5. Objectives will be to salvage 2 mini mules. Now, it does say salvage, so you will have to go through the full drop pod recovery process. You're also going to have to kill a dreadnought. It will be the Glyphid dreadnought, but the real complicator here is the mutator, which is shield disruption. What it means is that you have no shields for all of Mission 2, but you take 30% less damage from hostile sources, so bugs or radioactive crystals. It does not protect you from falling damage or friendly fire, though. My big tips here is to remember that ammo pods heal you. When you're fighting the boss, you will not have the benefit of your shielding, so if you take a fireball hit, it's kind of semi-permanent damage until you find a way to heal it, and the ammo pod might be just the right way. Also consider going in with the Red Rock Blaster Beer, which will give you a solid improvement to your total health. As far as the boss goes, you really want to target its 2 main advantages. It's very fast and it's heavily armored, so that you kind of have to shoot at its weak point, but there are ways around it. 1, use the Shard Diffractor with the Dazzler module upgrade. You don't need any overclocks here. The Shard Diffractor is the final weapon of the Engineer's secondary category. You shoot it anywhere, hit it in the weak point, even better, but it will do damage even if you shoot it right in the face, and the Dazzler module will slow it down. Likewise, the Corrosive Sludge Pump and the Colette Wave Cooker, which are the final primary and secondary weapons for the driller, and also make sure your Colette Wave Cooker has the Contagion Transmitter. Set up the combo with it, and it will slow the boss down to just like basically a crawl, and it does damage without having to hit its weak point, so that will allow you to punch the boss's ticket just fine. But let's wrap things up on Mission 3. Difficulty stays at Hazard 3.5. Your objectives will be to kill 2 dreadnoughts. They will be the twins and then another Glyphid dreadnought. You'll also need to collect 150 Morkite along the way. There's a mutator in effect, which is low oxygen. What this means is you have a 1-minute tank of oxygen on you, and if it runs out, you start dying very rapidly, but you can refill your oxygen at your mule or any of the ammo pods. My tips here is that this is mainly a boss-themed stage, and it's very important that you don't run out of oxygen. So you're definitely going to want to call in 1 ammo pod per boss so that you have a way to get your oxygen back in the middle of the fight. So my main combat tips are going to be, when you fight the twins, what you want to do is try to damage them equally, because when they heal, and they will heal, they heal by the weaker one heals to catch up to the stronger one. So if their health is about equal, then they have very little health to heal. Sometimes they actually lose lose health in the process. Also, remember to breathe during the boss fight. Now, for the Glyphid Dreadnought, once again, the same tips apply from before. Use your Shard Diffractor with the Dazzler module, or your Corrosive Sludge Pump with the Collet Wave Cooker with the Contagion Transmitter upgrade. You know, slow it down, beat it up. It shouldn't be a big deal if you've brought those kinds of weapons, because you take away its main advantage, which is that it's very, very quick. It'll be super slow if you use those. Okay, though, onwards into the Elite Deep Dives. This is going to occur in the Salt Pits, which is a pretty good biome. The only downside to it is that it's the home of the Coronar Younglings, which are mainly an annoyance, but it's something to keep in mind. Mission 1 has a difficulty of Hazard 4.5. You'll be collecting 200 Morkite and recovering a black box. If you've never done that before, it's just like doing one of the defense objectives at the end of a salvage ops. You just have to repair the black box and stay in the green capture zone until the bar fills up. The mutators are interesting, though. You've got Exploder Infestation, which causes regular attack waves of exploders. Then you've also got Volatile Guts, which causes enemies who are killed to self-destruct, or at least most enemies will. The really tiny enemies will not do this. When they die, though, they will self-destruct and damage other things nearby, including the dwarves. The good news, though, and this is my first tip, is that if you shoot the exploders before they get to you, in other words, they don't get to you and then self-destruct on their own, well then the Volatile Guts will just obliterate them in a chain reaction. In fact, if you could do that to any of the enemies, it will just rip them apart, which is absolutely fantastic. Just, once again, beware, it can damage you as well, so it gives you an even better incentive to not let the bugs get close to you. When you get to the part with the black box, remember your basic defensive strategies. You know, having a gunner, those shields are quite good. The gunner doesn't have to reload very much, can hose the enemies down. If you've got something like an engineer, you've got your turrets, your lures, your proximity mines, that will make things a lot easier. Drop an ammo near the black box in the capture range, preferably, so in the event you need to reload, you don't have to leave the capture location. And the last thing is, it's not a super hard mission, so I do recommend searching for as much nitra as you can find. That said, I didn't find very much nitra. I went into the next mission with basically 90 nitra. So, on to mission 2. Difficulty is now up to Hazard 5. Your objectives will be to salvage 3 mini mules. You will have to go through the full drop pod defensive recovery process. You'll also need to get 150 Morkite along the way. There's a mutator in effect, which is Elite Threat. What this means is some enemies will be considered elite. They will be bigger and they will glow with energy. This makes them faster, healthier, and they attack more frequently. The slashers in particular can be fairly dangerous. Most of them will probably be Praetorians, and they are startlingly quick and just really barge into a battle very suddenly. So, as far as my tips go, the good news is that there is a lot of nitra. Some of it in the form of loot bugs, and a lot of it in the form of the mini mules. Each of the mini mules you recover does give you some nitra and gold. The bad news is that the terrain doesn't really want to cooperate. It's rather fractal, and because of how fractal it is, it does favor the bugs, because they can climb over ledges, come from the roof, just all these annoying directions. It's not the worst terrain, but you'll definitely notice that it's not the best. So the way to counteract this is you need to kind of come together when you're defending against the swarm. Don't go off on your own, because the bugs will be very good at flanking here. And also, it would be really good if you could kind of select a designated swarm defense area that everyone can rally to as a rally point. As far as my advice for the defensive scenes, once again, the bugs are going to attack from some pretty aggravating directions, including, like, if there's a ledge nearby, they can basically appear in shotgun range right in front of you if you climb up a ledge. So it will pay big time if you've got some defensive-minded characters. I'm talking about a gunner. Once again, the shield is great. The shield lets you emergency revive somebody. The shield, you can just throw it on an ammo pod, and then people can reload their ammo in peace. Remember, it also heals you, so they can heal themselves in peace. The gunner is great for really holding the enemy back, as well as, of course, the engineer, because he's got all the full suite of defensive equipment, your lure, proximity mine, and turrets. Do that, and you've got a really good chance of clearing doing the defensive bit without too much of a hitch. Just make sure when you call in ammo, make sure you call it in range of the capture objective so you can reload while simultaneously capturing. Okay, let's finish strong in the final mission of the Elite Deep Dive. Mission 3, difficulty is up to hazard 5.5. Your objectives are to collect 225 Morkai, and you will have to knock out an enemy dreadnought. It will be yet another Glyphid dreadnought. The mutator for this mission is Swarmageddon, so you will be frequently attacked by packs of swarmers. Very annoying. There's going to be a ton of them since it's hazard 5.5. So my main tips here is, one, if you're feeling a little paranoid like you can't find any Morkite, don't worry. The Morkite is kind of on the backloaded side, meaning most of the Morkite is way deep into the cave, and it is a fairly lengthy and winding cave, so you will be traveling for a while. Expect a rather long trek from the mule recovering it to the escape pod. So my main tip here is don't let your guard down. Sometimes this mission is kind of quiet and you might be like, oh, this really isn't all that bad, but I've had some very abrupt, just humongous attacks out of nowhere, and you'll often be fighting in the cave because it is a longer winding cavern. So don't let your guard down. It is still hazard 5.5. The enemy can throw an absolute truck ton of bugs at you out of nowhere. Now, when you get to the Glyphid Dreadnought, same strategy applies to the previous Glyphid Dreadnought. Doesn't really matter what difficulty is, just use weapons that do damage through its armor and also slow it down. So, Shard Diffractor with the Dazzler module, or Corrosive Sludge Pump combined with the Collet Wave Cooker with the Contagion Transmitter. It slows the boss down like crazy, and it does damage even if you don't hit its weak point. You don't need any fancy overclocks. This basic equipment that will get the job done. But here is my final tip. This is a big one. So in the final room, you'll know the final room because it has a bit of a drop off into a pit with a bunch of pillars. Well, that's where the Morkite was, and a surprise boss. That's right, a Dreadnought Hiveguard spawned as a bonus boss for me. Now, I don't know if it's random. Maybe you won't fight one, but I absolutely did. The good news is that the same setup that will take out a Glyphid Dreadnought will absolutely take out a Hiveguard. So, you know, your Shard Diffractor, you know what I'm talking about. Shard Diffractor, Sludge Pump, Collet Wave Cooker, that will absolutely body the Hiveguard. But what I will say is try to always make sure you're hanging on to at least one ammo pod just in case at the end. Maybe you won't fight the Hiveguard. I absolutely did. And another tip would be when you get to this room, if you're like a gunner, shoot some zip lines around. Make sure people can get up and down, because some of my allies definitely were caught blindsided by the Hiveguard and they got confused and they weren't able to recover from the initial shock very quickly. Got a little dicey, though it was still under control. So remember, beware of the Hiveguard, make the room safe, and save one ammo pod just in case. All right, though, let's go ahead and wrap things up. Here are my Dwarf MVP recommendations. First, we'll talk about the deep dive. So my MVPs here are Engineer and Driller. You're going to be fighting a lot of bosses here, and there's some defensive sequences, so the Engineer and the Driller are great for knocking out bosses. Engineer, I've said it many times, Shard Diffractor with the Dazzler module, absolutely amazing for bosses. And then for the defensive sequences, you got turrets, mines, lures, awesome for the defense. Now the Driller, on the other hand, you can drill down the beamers, which is nice. Remember, you can also use the low gravity jump up and power attack the tip of the beamers, but you also have that Corrosive Sludge Pump, Collet Wave Cooker with the Contagion Transmitter. Absolutely going to just rip apart those bosses because it makes them so slow. They're basically helpless. Even if there's people that have more traditional guns, the slowness of the boss means they can get right behind the boss and hose them down. Now for the Elite Deep Dive, I'm going to recommend Engineer and Gunner as my MVPs, and that's because you're mainly going to be dealing with swarm defenses and sometimes in rather cramped quarters like tunnels. Now, the Engineer is great for security because he's got the turrets, the mines, the lures. Great stuff for dealing with swarms of enemies. Going to be great for doing the black box. Great for defending the salvage operation at the end of the salvage job. You've got your Shard Diffractor, which will be good against the one boss, maybe a second boss. Don't know if it'll spawn or not. And of course, you've got to mine a lot of Morkite. Why wouldn't you want platforms to make Morkite mining faster? Then you've got the Gunner. Gunner main, the primary weapon on the Gunner, great for just mowing down swarms. You also have the comeback tool. You've got the shield generator. Somebody goes down, throw a shield on them, revive them. Somebody's out of ammo in the middle of a tough fight, throw a shield on the ammo pod. Bam, they can reload in peace. The gunner is just able to save the team in so many unfortunate, tough situations. And you've got zip lines. Who's going to say no to zip lines? Great combination with the platforms. And in the final area, if you do wind up finding a hive guard, the zip lines might be just what you need to safely navigate the ugly terrain. Anyways, that is it for this week's dives. Overall, I would say they are easier than normal, but don't let the easiness lull you into a false sense of security. So, get in there, get your Matrix cores, and remember, if you'd like to catch me playing the deep dives live, watch me on Thursdays at Get Good Fox on Twitch. But that's the end of this. Like the video if it was entertaining, subscribe for more Deep Rock Galactic content. But at the end of the day, of course, remember that you don't have to be good to get good.